Over to the phones we go, and on the line, Congressman Adam Kinzinger taking time out of his day for us. Congressman, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. I'm ready for winter to be over.
I think we all are.
For this.
Just tired of it. Cherry blossoms, how long before they go off?
I think it's supposed to be soon. I don't know. We're always ended up being out. So it's like a month from now or something, and then it lasts for like 47 seconds, and then it's done.
Yeah, you get outside and they're all littering the pavement. Hey, what happened here?
Is it snowing? No.
Congressman, big news toward the weekend, of course. Friday, late Friday, we got a 1-week extension done on DHS funding, and that'll expire again coming up this Friday. What do you think will change between now and then? Will there be a new strategy that's somehow unearthed between now and Friday?
No, and I think we need to take a little bit of time to talk about this. So, we talk about the war on ISIS. We talk about, America's perception of getting weak around the globe. I got to be honest with you, it's crises like this that feed into that perception. So, when somebody's sitting in Germany or they're in Russia, and which they all watch American news because, as the most powerful country in the world, news comes through us, and they watch and they see yet another deadline approach, and two sides that are unwilling to work together, and a president who's unwilling to work with Republicans. I mean, this weakens our country, and I think that's something we need to realize. What happened last Friday was a group of so-called conservatives, and I say so-called conservatives because I don't think their moves are conservative, and frankly, they represent a very small part of our conference. Brought down a bill with Nancy Pelosi that would extend for 3 weeks the spending on the Department of Homeland Security, which would give us time to go to conference with the Senate bill, which is constitutional. If we believe in the Constitution, that's the process to do this. It would get us past Netanyahu's speech this week, which I think the world needs to focus on as we talk about the dangers of Iran. And instead, that group of phony conservatives brought that bill down, and we were forced in the last minute to put a simple 1-week extension forward. So now this week, instead of talking about, Benjamin Netanyahu coming to speak to the House about the dangers of Iran and the president's failure in dealing with that, it's going to be intermixed with, will the government shut down again? And I mean, the last thing I'll say on that is this, we knew going forward that we were never going to get 67 votes in the U.S. Senate for this strategy. And it's one thing to say that we tried and to give it a try, which I think we needed to do. That's why I voted for this strategy initially. But there's got to be a point at which we can realize that you can't win something, and instead of saying, well, if you vote to govern, you're not a true conservative, we need to shut down the government. We've got to figure out how to do a proper off-ramp to say, the president owns this, and we're fighting this in the courts.
This the strategy to tie the immigration issue, the president's immigration orders, to DHS funding. I mean, that's a leadership call, right? I mean, that's something that the strategy was laid out when the last budget went through, and leadership said, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to make our stand on the issue with the DHS funding. We're only going to fund it through the end of February, and there we can fight. So is this a leadership issue? Is this a strategy issue that people have chosen the wrong way to go about this?
I kind of think it's both. I think it's somewhat leadership, but it's leadership in some cases, listening to what 20 people or 30 people are saying because they're more interested in going out and making a name for this. Look, so back in December, we had to pass a spending bill. The whole government was about to shut down. And in order to placate some folks, we did the thing with the short-term extension of the Department of Homeland Security. And I voted for it. I thought that was fine. It would give us a couple months with the Senate now to see, what strategy can we figure out? Is there a chance that the president's going to come to the table on this? And in the middle of that, and this is what we were hoping for, in the middle of that, the court came out and said, we are putting an injunction on the president's executive order, and it will not be in place until the court has a chance to hear it. Under Article 3 of the Constitution, they're the ones that basically, decide between the dispute between the executive and the legislative branch, which is what we have here. So when the courts came forward and did that, my thing, and I think I even said it on your show at that point, was this is the court arresting this situation and taking it and determining it, and now it's our job to govern. But instead, there are, again, a group of folks that said, well, even though this is now being decided in the courts, we want to continue to go forward with trying to get 67 Senate votes, which is completely unrealistic, and everybody knows that. But then what happens is leadership eventually has to say, well, we got to keep the government open. And then again, there's 20 or 30 people that can point to leadership and say, look, they capitulated once again. Look, there are a lot of, the folks in the Republican Party, myself included, are very conservative and very upset with the president's executive action, but we don't want to shut down the Department of Homeland Security in the process of that.
Now, I've heard other people, call out there's a crisis in leadership then. You got a leadership problem, the rumblings of a coup, you often hear the rumblings of a coup against this, the speaker and all that. Is it a crisis of leadership?
I think leadership has got to be much stronger about a direction for our country. And that direction includes, again, look, we believe in the Constitution. We're the party of the Constitution. The Constitution was a compromise. It was a compromise between northern states, southern states, big states, little states. It has compromise written all over it. And it's written to force compromise. So if you have two sides that don't agree on anything, you can get nothing done. The goal is to try to find a way to still advance the country with very different viewpoints. So I think leadership on both sides, and of course the president's the leader of this. He's the leader of the free world. He's the guy that's created this major division in the country. But I think leadership's got to be strong to say, here's the direction that we move forward. There are rumblings of a coup. We've all heard that. But this is maybe 5 to 10% of the whole Republican caucus, and frankly, it's just not going to be successful.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. I want to ask one more question, then we'll move on. Through this whole process, dating back to November, where the president made these executive orders on immigration, as you've seen this unfold, the strategy and how the House wants to go about fighting this, has this taught you anything, or has this given you a lesson on the ability of the House in what should be a checks and balances kind of government, the ability of the House to act as a check on executive power, or the ability of Congress in general to act as a check on executive power in a divided government like we have right now? Have you learned anything about that? Is it still possible to do that?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and we're still doing that. I mean, look, we may not agree with the executive order, and we may say, defund it. If you really think about this, if you look at the Department of Homeland Security and you look at the idea of defunding the president's executive order, it's actually not really possible. And there's been 100 experts that have said that, this executive order is actually funded by fees, and fees are not decided by where we spend money. It's written in policy. So there's a question, even if the Department of Homeland Security would shut down, these executive orders could go forward. So, what's our end goal here? And keep in mind, at the end of the day, we have acted as a check because we put up a fight. It was taken by the courts, and now the court is going to decide this. You also look at the fact that President Obama wanted a second $800 billion stimulus. President Obama wanted to expand Obamacare and probably make it a fully, government health care. You look at the fact that we've taken the deficit from $1.5 trillion when I took office to about $470 billion this year, which is way too much. But it's the largest decrease of the federal deficit in American history. You look at these things we've been able to do. We've been able to hold off the EPA. We have the IRS has the same funding levels that it had in 1989 in punishment for what they did to target conservative Tea Party groups. We've made a lot of progress in being a check and balance. The problem is sometimes we put unrealistic expectations on what the House Republicans can do, and instead of celebrating our major victories, which have been huge, we sometimes focus on what we can't do and say that the majority has been a failure. But I got to tell you, when you really look back and see what we've been able to do, it's really been a rousing, huge success. But we have a lot more to go, a lot more to do.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us, Illinois' 16th District. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Let's move on to another type of executive power, overreach perhaps. The Internet regulation, the so-called net neutrality that the FCC agreed to. No one knows. No one knows what the heck's in it. 300-some pages. It's behind closed doors. They won't release it to the public, but they've approved it. How does Congress respond to something like this?
Well, I'm actually on the committee that deals with it. And about 3 years ago, I introduced FCC process reform, which is really dry and kind of boring, but what it means is that no longer can FCC commissioners be able to decide stuff behind closed doors. It's more sunshine from the public, which, with the thing like telecommunications is extremely important. I remember 10, 15, 20 years ago going to Europe, and they had these new cool cell phones that we didn't have. Well, since then, America has really taken over the technology space. And so the process of this has been egregious. The idea that the American people can't know what's going on. The issue itself is one that, we've got to take a wait-and-see approach, but I don't agree with what the president's doing. I mean, he's taken the Internet, which is this free and open thing that has allowed people to, somebody without any money to come forward and create an idea and become a billionaire or a millionaire or whatever. They're now taking that free and open Internet and putting it under Title II regulations, which is the same thing that governs telephone companies. And, look, I have a real problem with the idea of taking something that's working so well and putting it under the control of the federal government. So on the committee, we've had a couple hearings on this already. We've had hearings over the last couple of years. We're going to continue to do that and then see what kind of legislative fix we can put forward. Keep in mind, though, a legislative fix, once again, means we have to have the president sign it. Unlikely. So this could be a kind of a long-term focus. Keep in mind, presidential elections have consequences, and we've got to win in 2 years.
Yeah, hard to believe people got their backs up over this. I mean, the last time that we didn't get a chance to look at something before it was voted on, look how well that worked out.
Yeah, that's right, and Nancy Pelosi celebrated that, too. And, again, it's how Democrats do business. They really, truly, in their heart, believe in the power of government and that ultimately the power of government is good and that bigger government is better. And so they think like, hey, we're doing this on behalf of people. But what they don't get is that, there is a role for the federal government, but it needs to be smaller, it needs to be more limited, and people need to know what their government's doing because that's democracy and freedom, and that's work.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, before we let you go, we've got to talk about the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, coming to D.C. He's already there, actually. We'll address a joint session of Congress this week. There are huge concerns about what's happening with Iran and what we've agreed to give up to Iran, the ability to, down the road, maybe you can go make some nuclear weapons, have the ability after 10 years or so. What does it say to you when Democrats, a good number, I mean, more than a handful, are just going to boycott this speech?
Well, it says that Democrats and some of these Democrats, and I don't mean to paint all of them with a broad brush, frankly, are uninterested in national security. They're uninterested in hearing. They're more interested in playing partisan politics with the president. They don't want to embarrass him, and they're less interested in finding out what's going on. A nuclear Iran is a game changer for the entire world. The House of Representatives, the People's House and Senate, have every right to hear what the Prime Minister of Israel has to say. And, the president's the one that made this a big issue. Keep in mind, Netanyahu was going to be in town anyway because he was going to speak this to AIPAC today. So the president has made this a huge deal, and frankly, it's really... Let me just say one real quick thing. In the Iran negotiations, initially, the administration said no centrifuges, no right to enrich. Then they said, well, something like 500 centrifuges, and now they're actually floating the number of 6,500 centrifuges. So tell me what Iran has given up, because I can tell you what the United States has given up in this negotiation.
Well, that and the fact that there's some personal animus between our leader and theirs, and having that bleed over so openly into diplomacy is kind of frightening.
Well, look, I've always said President Obama has the thinnest skin of politics, I think, of anybody I know. I mean, I know members of Congress with pretty thin skin, but I think this president has got probably the thinnest skin of all, and he takes things personally. And that's kind of what happens when you have a narcissistic personality, is anybody that challenges you is bad and you can't get along with them.
Yeah, that's the way Scott and I look at people who challenge us anyway.
That's standard, though, right?
That is pretty standard. Congressman, as always, man, thanks a lot for taking time out of your morning for us.
You bet, guys. I enjoyed it. Take care.